So after the last video, I had a bunch of people reach out and they were all basically asking the same question in different ways. And it was something like, okay, I know I'm burnt out, but is the job actually the problem or is it me? And honestly, I think that's one of the most important questions you can ask yourself in this situation, because the answer completely changes what you should do next. Because if it's burnout, the solution looks one way. And if your workplace is genuinely toxic, the solution looks completely different. And if you mix them up, if you treat a toxic job like a personal burnout problem, you're going to work on yourself for months and come back to the same broken environment and wonder why nothing got better. So let's actually get into how you tell the difference. The reason this is so hard to figure out is that burnout and a toxic workplace feel almost identical from the inside. You're exhausted, you dread going in, everything feels harder than it should, you're irritable, you've started not caring about things you used to care about. The symptoms overlap almost completely, so it makes sense that people can't tell them apart. And the other thing that makes it complicated is that they cause each other. A toxic workplace will burn you out, and being burned out makes any workplace feel more toxic than it actually is. So you end up in this loop where you genuinely can't see clearly anymore. I've been in that loop, and the frustrating thing is that when you're inside it, everyone's advice sounds right. Someone says you need to rest more, and that sounds right. Someone else says you need to get out of that place, and that also sounds right. And you just don't know which one actually applies to you. So here's the thing that actually helped me start to untangle this, and it's one question. Have you felt this way at other jobs, or is this specific to this place? Because burnout is something you carry with you. It lives in you, and it'll follow you to a new job if the underlying patterns don't change. If you're someone who overworks, who can't switch off, who takes on too much and never draws a line, that's going to show up wherever you go. But a toxic workplace is situational. It exists in that place and those people and that culture. And when you leave it, it doesn't follow you the same way. So if you think back honestly to before this job, were you doing okay? Did you have a normal relationship with work? Did you feel like a functional person? If the answer is yes, then there's a decent chance the environment is doing something to you that isn't entirely about you. But if you've struggled with this pattern across multiple jobs, multiple teams, multiple industries, then the common thread is probably worth looking at a bit more honestly. Okay, so let's talk about what actually points to the environment being the real problem. Because I think some of these are obvious and some of them are things people normalize way too quickly. The obvious ones first. If there's open yelling, public humiliation, threats about job security used as motivation, blatant favoritism where the rules apply differently to different people, yeah, that's not burnout, that's just a bad place. But then there are the quieter signs that I think are more common and more dangerous because they're easier to dismiss. One is that information is constantly weaponized. You find out things that affect you after the fact. You're excluded from conversations you should be part of. People know things you don't, and that gap is never accidental. Another one is that mistakes are treated as character flaws rather than things that just happen when people are doing work. There's no, okay, what do we learn from this? It's just blame, and the blame sticks and gets brought up again later. And then there's this one that I think is the most insidious, which is that the culture runs on fear, and nobody says it out loud, but everyone feels it. People are careful about what they say in meetings. Nobody actually tells the boss what they think. There's a version of events that gets presented upwards and a completely different reality that gets discussed quietly when the managers aren't around. If that last one sounds familiar, you're probably not just burned out. Now, I want to flip this because I think this part is actually harder to talk about, but it's just as important. Sometimes the workplace is genuinely fine, and the problem is the patterns you're bringing to it. And recognizing that is not an insult. It's actually useful information because it means the solution is in your hands. If you feel exhausted and resentful, but the people around you seem to be doing okay, not perfectly, not happily, but basically functioning, that's worth paying attention to, because a truly toxic environment tends to affect everyone, not just one person. If you've changed teams or departments and the feeling followed you, that's also a signal. And there's this specific thing I want to name, which is the high achiever trap, where you're someone who's always set a very high bar for yourself and you've been running at 110% for so long that your baseline is completely broken, and anything less than that feels like failure, even when it's actually just normal. That's not the company's fault, and leaving won't fix it, because you'll just rebuild the same dynamic somewhere new. I've watched people do this. Quit a perfectly decent job, go somewhere else, and within a year they're in the exact same spot. And then they start wondering if every job is like this, when actually the job isn't really the variable. Okay, real quick, which one is resonating more for you right now? Is it feeling like the place itself is the problem, or is it more like you think it might be a pattern you're carrying? Drop it in the comments, because I'm genuinely curious where most people are landing on this. Now here's the honest part. Most people aren't in a clean either-or situation. Most people are in this gray zone where the workplace has some genuinely problematic stuff happening, but they're also bringing some of their own stuff to it, and the two things are kind of feeding each other. And in that gray zone, the question isn't which one is it, the question is which one came first and which one is bigger. Because if the environment triggered your burnout, then fixing yourself while staying in that environment is like trying to heal a wound while someone keeps reopening it. You might make some progress, but you're fighting against the thing that's causing the damage at the same time. But if your own patterns were already a problem before this place made it worse, then leaving might give you some relief, but it won't give you the root fix you actually need. The way I think about it is like this. Imagine tomorrow you got a new job, completely fresh start, new team, new manager, new culture. How much of what you're feeling do you think would follow you there? Like, honestly, if the answer is most of it, then it's probably more internal. And if the answer is almost none of it, then the environment is probably doing more damage than you're giving it credit for. So let's say you've thought about it and you've landed somewhere. What do you actually do? If it's the workplace, the work is about finding an exit and being honest with yourself that no amount of personal development is going to fix a structurally broken environment. You can get better at handling it, but you shouldn't have to. And staying too long in a genuinely toxic place does damage that takes a while to undo. If it's more internal, then the work is different. It's about understanding where the patterns come from, what you're getting from overworking or overgiving or whatever the specific thing is, and starting to actually shift that. Because you can take that work into any environment and come out the other side differently. And if it's both, which again is most people, then you do some of both at the same time. And you accept that it's messy and complicated and doesn't have a clean answer. And that's okay. The main thing is just that you're asking the right question, which is not how do I survive this, but what is actually happening here and what do I need to do about it? Because surviving and actually fixing it are two completely different things, and most people spend years doing the first one without ever getting to the second. Look, this stuff is genuinely hard to see clearly when you're in the middle of it. And I'm not going to pretend there's some clean framework that makes it obvious, because there isn't. But I do think most people already have a sense of the answer somewhere underneath all the noise and the exhaustion. They just need a bit of space and permission to actually look at it honestly, without immediately talking themselves out of what they're seeing. So if you've been going back and forth on this for a while, is it me? Is it them? Is it both? I just say trust what you've been noticing, even if it's inconvenient. And if the answer points somewhere uncomfortable, that's probably exactly why it's been so hard to look at.